Something a bit lighter now. Just something you love, something you hate about Japan. I don't know if that's a good question to ask a Buddhist monk in training.
Yeah. You say Japan. I live in Tokyo.
Okay.
And when I first came here, I fell in love with Tokyo. People say, hey, you've been here 5 years. What do you like about Japan? You've been here 10 years. You've been here 20 years. What do you like about Japan? And until recently, my standard answer was, Japan's all right. I mean, I can take it or leave it. But personally, I'm head over heels in love with Tokyo. In the past 10 years or so, I've taken a broader interest in Japan itself, walking in the mountains, traveling around. But still, my big love is Tokyo. It's interesting. If you ask me what I don't like about Tokyo, I can talk to you for 36 hours, 72 hours without stopping. If you ask me what I like about it, it's a little more difficult to articulate. Some things that come to mind, though, are the vitality of the city, the sexual energy everywhere. I don't mean that in a base way, but just living. In New York or Chicago or London, there are places in the city where only business happens. And at night, you're not likely to meet anybody there, at least the kind of people you want to run into at night. But in Tokyo, with a couple of minor exceptions, parts of Otemachi and Marunouchi, people live everywhere. Everywhere you go in Tokyo, there's people living. You walk down the street and here's a little police box, here's an apartment building, here's a dry cleaning shop, here's a home. Just everywhere there's this mix of daily life and business life. It can be overpowering, when you're feeling down or you're tired or something, because there's no place to get away from it. But as long as you can respond positive to that life force, Tokyo is a tremendously stimulating place to be.
Thank you. On that note, sort of maybe a more broader view of Japan, are there any sort of historical figures or celebrities? I mean, you mentioned a poet earlier on, but anyone that you really admire?
Gosh, I'm a monk in training, and I don't really have much feeling of association with any particular sect, but I'm registered with the Soto sect of Buddhism. Somewhere in a vault is my name written somewhere. And so I would be remiss in not citing Eihei Dogen, the person who brought that branch of Buddhism to Japan from China in the 13th century. He was a very interesting, very profound figure, a very problematic figure.
In what way?
He was a fundamentalist. And if you follow his daily record, Dogen's one of these people who is many different things to different readers. Because if you read what he was saying late in his life, it's very different from what he was saying in midlife. Things like women in the priesthood, for example. At one point, he was extremely modern. And he pointed out that one of the Buddha's first disciples was a woman, and that there should be no distinction between men and women. At other times, he was very different. His teachings about the role of the lay and the priesthood. Early on, he said, enlightenment is for anyone who chooses to be enlightened. Later in life, he became more fundamentalist and rigid, and saying the only people who really get it are those who leave the lay and become members of the priesthood. So again, it's just depending on what stage of his life you're reading. But he was a brilliant man, and a lot of people have benefited hugely from the teachings that he brought.
Interesting. Okay, moving on again. Maybe over the 34 years you've been here, you must have seen a lot of foreigners or non-Japanese people come and go, and maybe a lot of them made a complete failure of what they tried to achieve here. Secrets of success in Japan. What have you noticed, or what can you point out?
That's a wonderful question, and you hear it a lot. But I prefer the biological metaphor. Adam, you're walking down the street. Somebody comes walking along. Somebody you hadn't seen for 20 years. But pop, right in front of your eyes. And you go up to him and say, "Hey, how you doing? Are you successful?" Or, "Are you succeeding?" And he's not likely to answer, "Yes, I am successful," or "Yes, I am succeeding," or "No, I have failed." I mean, that's not the way we talk or think. What would you say? I don't know how you talk about you. You'd probably say, "Hey, how you doing?"
How you doing, yeah.
And the answer would be, "Yeah, I'm getting by." Or, "Oh, God, you don't want to hear about this," or something like that. It could be anything.
Yeah.
But we don't think of our lives in terms of success or failure. And if you look at companies, it's exactly the same thing. The companies that are here are successful by definition. They're alive. They're getting by. Now, you have a company like Olympus. Is it doing as well as it should be doing? Well, no, because they haven't been managed properly. But they're getting by. And I'm not trying to be funny here, but I really do think we sort of miss the forest for the trees when we dwell on concepts like successful or unsuccessful.
How about maybe putting it a bit more simply then, tips for, you mentioned there's a lot of energy, and it can be overbearing, sort of overpowering, and 35 million people, basically neighbors. Just tips about how to, not let that pressure and stress and all that power and energy, overwhelm you.
Enjoy it. Seriously, if you're new to Japan, I would definitely encourage you to not hang out with just foreigners. I'd say go out on your own. This is probably easier for men to do than for women to do. But Tokyo's a safe place even for women. Explore the city on your own, because when you're alone, people can come up with you, come up and talk to you. And I think it's a tremendous mistake when you've come to Japan just to hang out with foreigners and sort of segregate yourself from that vitality that we're talking about. Language is important, but it's not everything. I mean, some people are just not given to language, or maybe they speak 18 other languages and they don't have time to pick up Japanese. And so learning the language is, of course, important, but you can get by in Tokyo without the language.
I know this question has just popped into my mind, but when's the last time you went back to the US?
Gosh, that's an embarrassing question, because I haven't been back for 2 years.
Okay.
Work was taking me to the States 5-6 times a year for several years. I traveled extensively for a couple decades.
And I mean, what I want to ask you is, how has your view of America changed based on sort of your life here, or has it changed?
This might be a little philosophical, but the biggest insight I had into the United States occurred immediately on coming to Japan, and it was concurrently an insight into Japan. I'd always been very political, at least strong interest in things political. Spent a lot of time arguing with friends and family about political issues. But when I came to Japan, I realized that what we call conservative and liberal in the United States are very different from what the dictionary indicates for those terms. When I came to Japan, I realized that there is not a single conservative in the entire United States. Conservative in the sense of wanting to keep things as they are. I apologize for being a little philosophical here, but what I'm saying is that you look at the Reagan lovers, or you look at even the Bush lovers, these people are not trying to keep things as they are. They're trying to change them in a direction different from that direction envisioned by the people known as liberals. But people in America all believe that, as the old Greeks said, give me a lever long enough, I'll move the earth. Americans are born and grow up thinking that they can change the world. It's a very optimistic, in the most profound, most basic sense of the word optimism. In Japan, on the other hand, they have the words conservative and liberal, but in Japan there's no liberals. There is nobody in Japan, almost nobody in Japan, who thinks that they can really change society. It's a profound distinction.
That's so interesting.
But living here and looking back on America, you see it. Now, there's obviously good and bad to both of these things. Japan's approach, Japan's philosophical stance engenders a great sense of social stability. And social stability is a platform for lots of exciting lifestyle choices, entrepreneurial choices. I mean, that stability is crucial. In the United States, we go back and forth every year, every month.
Back on the on talking about the kind of your interest in politics. There's been the recent kind of disagreement between China and Japan over the islands.
Yes.
And I think we have in Japan. There's some very strong figures who are very interested in change, who are kind of behind the what's going on and so on. So, do you have without getting anyone into trouble here, what would your sort of position be on that, or your view?
The role of diplomacy is only secondarily one of resolving issues. The role of diplomacy is fundamentally one of preventing latent frictions from becoming real frictions. So my big concern here is we've seen a spectacular failure of the diplomatic function in Japan, in Korea, in China, in Russia. But I don't think it's too late. But in regard to that question, there is nothing to be gained from whatsoever from you or me or from the Prime Minister or anyone saying whose islands these are. When they first appeared on a map as Japanese territory or Chinese territory. The role of people who are responsible for ensuring our safety, the quality of life, is to keep these frictions from even occurring. And there's lots of very concrete things that could happen to that end. Unfortunately, they have not happened, but I hope that they will happen soon.
One quick example, and then last question for you.
There's all sorts of room for joint use, joint jurisdiction. Fortunately, none of these places are known to have any great natural resources.
Not yet, but there's the potential.
Fine, but still, I think a commitment to joint jurisdiction, I think, would be
wonderful. Okay, it's so interesting talking to you, and I think we could go on for hours. Very, very last point. Any comment to our viewers? Anything you like? You can talk anything you like. Life in Japan, Buddhism, message to the world, anything you like.
if you've never come to Tokyo, I hope that you'll have the opportunity to come someday. If you do, get in touch with me through Adam. I'd love to take you drinking, go walking through the city. Tokyo is a great walking city. Tokyo is really a wonderful city for walking. And I walk a lot here, and I love company. So if you ever have the chance, please do.
Thanks for that. And there may be a link to your homepage, or we could put a link on our
Unfortunately,
website.
I don't
Oh, you don't have
one.
one?
I make
Okay.
websites for other people. But
Okay. All right then. Thank you very much. Just a very big thanks again to Waku.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, it's been interesting and also very inspirational for me listening to some of your ideas and insights. So thanks again. I'm Adam Kassab here at GLOBIS. You've been watching Inside Japan, and catch you again next time.